Tonight, you'll probably fall asleep beside a glowing phone, under a locked roof, with the heating humming in the walls. But 20,000 years ago, night was not cozy. Night meant total darkness, freezing cold, and things out there that wanted to eat you. There were no clocks, no light switch, no alarm to wake them. And yet, somehow, every single night, they slept. And here is the strange part that researchers keep running into. They may have slept better than we do. So how did they do it, with none of the things we are sure we need? Let's go back to the night the lights did not exist. First question. With no clock on any wall, how did anybody know it was even time to sleep? The answer was hanging right above their heads the whole time. The sun was the clock. As the light drained out of the sky, their brains started releasing a chemical called melatonin, the body's own quiet signal that says, "Wind down, it's time." But it was never only about the darkness. As the sun left, the whole world began to cool. And that cold carried a message too. To fall asleep, your body actually has to cool down on the inside. So, as the night air dropped, their bodies dropped right along with it. So they never really decided to go to sleep. The spinning planet decided it for them, the same way it decides for every animal alive. And in the morning, there was no alarm clock screaming them awake in the dark at 6. Just the sky slowly turning grey, the first birds starting up, and a little warmth creeping back into the air. They woke with the sun, and they slept in its absence. A clock far older than any city, any empire, any human invention. But knowing when to sleep was the easy part. The hard part was surviving the hours you slept through. Because darkness was not their biggest problem. Their biggest problem had teeth. Lions, hyenas, bears, animals built to hunt in the dark, exactly when a sleeping human cannot see them coming. So how do you dare to sleep when sleeping itself can get you killed? You light a fire. Fire did 3 jobs at once. It was heat against the cold. It was light against the black. And it was a wall the darkness simply could not cross. Almost every predator fears fire. A camp that glowed all night told every hungry animal in the valley one thing: not here, not tonight. And the warmth let them do the most dangerous thing of all in a freezing, hostile night. It let them relax, drop their guard, and truly sleep. But now a twist. We assume the fire helped them fall asleep. Some scientists think firelight did the exact opposite. It actually kept them up later. Around that fire, people talked. They told stories. They stared into the flames for hours. The campfire became the very first television. But firelight is warm, orange, and dim. Nothing like the cold blue glare of your phone. It relaxes the brain, instead of tricking it into thinking it's the middle of the day. So fire did not ruin their sleep. It bought them the safety to have it. But that safety raised a brand new question. If the whole camp was asleep, then who was watching the fire? This is where it gets genuinely clever. In a sleeping group, somebody was almost always awake, and nobody had to plan it. Scientists have a name for it. They call it the Sentinel hypothesis. To test it, researchers studied the Hadza, a people in Tanzania who still hunt and gather the way humans did for most of our history. They watched them sleep, night after night, for weeks. And over more than 200 hours of sleep, there were only a tiny handful of minutes when every single person was asleep at the very same time. Fun fact number 1. Because people of different ages naturally sleep at different times, a mixed age group ends up guarding itself, completely automatically. The older adults dozed off early and woke before dawn. The younger ones stayed up late and slept in. The result was a rotating night watch that no one ever had to organize. So the thing we now treat as a problem, grandpa waking at 4 in the morning, the teenager who simply will not sleep, used to be a feature that kept everyone alive. Waking at strange hours did not mean you were broken. For most of human history, it meant you were the guard. Which leads us straight into the strangest idea of this whole story. The possibility that ancient humans did not sleep in one long block at all. Did everybody really lie down at dusk and sleep one straight, unbroken 8 hours? The evidence says, surprisingly, no. Here is the myth we all picture. Cavemen collapsing at sunset and sleeping like the dead until dawn. The reality is so much more interesting than that. A historian named Roger Ekirch spent years digging through thousands of old diaries, court records, prayer books, and letters. And he found something that had been hiding in plain sight for centuries. Over and over, in writing from all across the world, people casually mentioned their first sleep and then their second sleep. Fun facts number 2. For most of human history, people slept in 2 separate shifts, and they woke up in the middle of the night completely on purpose. They would sleep for a few hours after dark, then wake naturally around midnight, and simply stay awake for an hour, sometimes 2. This was not insomnia. Nobody panicked, it was normal, it was expected, and by every account, it was actually peaceful. So what on earth did people do at midnight, in the dark, with no screens and nowhere to be? They added wood to the fire. They talked quietly with whoever else was up. They prayed, they thought, they remembered their dreams. Some slipped out to visit neighbors, and many, frankly, used that hour to make the next generation. And then, when their bodies were finally ready again, they lay back down for the second sleep and drifted off until dawn. In some places, that quiet waking hour even had a name. They called it the Watch. A calm, private little window in the dead middle of the night that belonged entirely to you. This pattern only disappeared a few centuries ago when artificial light let us stuff the evening full of activity and squeeze all our sleep into one single rushed block. But hold on, where were these people actually sleeping? Surely not all of them just lying on the cold, hard ground. Caves helped, of course. They blocked the wind, the rain, and the worst of the cold. But a bare stone cave floor is brutal to actually sleep on. So they did something we never give them credit for. They built bedding. And astonishingly, we have actually found some of it. Fun facts number 3. In a cave in South Africa called Sibudu, archaeologists uncovered a mattress that is 77,000 years old. It was built from layers of compacted plant stems and leaves, pressed down and rebuilt over and over. The oldest known bedding anywhere on Earth. And here is the genius detail. The very top layer was made from a leaf that naturally repels mosquitoes and biting insects. A bug-proof mattress, tens of thousands of years before the word mattress even existed. These people were not just barely surviving, they were quietly engineering comfort. They also slept close together, bodies packed in, sharing heat, piled under shared hides and furs. Warmth was survival, and company was warmth. Now compare that to us. Each of us alone in a separate room, behind a locked door, temperature set to perfect. And still, so many of us lie there, wide awake. Which brings us to the big, uncomfortable question. With all of our technology, do we actually sleep better than they did? Strangely, the researchers think the answer might be no. To find out, scientists went and studied people who still live with no electricity at all. The Hadza in Tanzania, the San in Namibia, and the Tsimane in Bolivia. They strapped sleep trackers onto them and watched their nights for weeks at a time, and the results genuinely surprised everyone. Fun fact number 4. These groups sleep only about 6.5 hours a night. Often, that is less than the average person in a modern electric city. Less sleep. No memory foam mattress. No blackout curtains. No sleeping pills. And yet, almost none of them lie awake at night, fighting to fall asleep. In fact, several of their languages do not even have a word for insomnia. The exact thing that millions of us fight every single night barely exists for them. Their secret is not more sleep, it is better timing. Bright, powerful sun all through the day. True, total darkness at night, and a body still running on that ancient clock. They soak up intense morning light that sets their internal clock like a key in a lock. We sit in dim offices all day, then blast ourselves with bright screens at night. The exact opposite. Their body temperature still rises and falls with the real turning world. Ours fights a thermostat, a glowing phone, and a 6 a.m. alarm that has nothing to do with the sun. So, when we ask how they ever slept without our technology, maybe we have had the entire question backwards this whole time. Because the shocking part is not that they survived the dark. The shocking part is that their sleep may have been more natural and more deeply human than ours has ever been. They did not own clocks. They were the clock. They did not fight the night. They moved with it, the way the tide moves with the moon. We added light and locks, and heat, and endless comfort. And somehow, we ended up more exhausted than people who slept on a pile of leaves. So maybe they were never the ones doing it wrong. Maybe, by every measure that actually matters to the human body, we are. So tonight, when you reach for the light switch, and then reach for your phone, just remember, there is an older clock still ticking quietly inside you. Maybe the real question was never how ancient humans slept without our technology. Maybe the real question is whether we can still sleep with it. If this made you see the dark just a little differently tonight, then subscribe and stay curious. Sleep well.